Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Revitalized Life Podcast. I have such a special guest on today, and I'm so excited to introduce her, Dr. Joy Kong. And she is a UCLA trained, triple board certified physician. She is also the president of Chara Health in Los Angeles, where she specializes in stem cell therapy, peptide therapy, ketamine therapy, as well as other integrative modalities to enhance overall health and combat chronic illness. Dr. Kong founded American Academy of Integrative Cell Therapy, where she provides training to other physicians on stem cell therapy and is a published author in the scientific journals. She is also the founder and CEO of Chara Biologics. I can't say that word. Help me out.
Biologics.
Biologics. Sorry. A company dedicated to providing cutting-edge regenerative medicine products to the US and globally. Dr. Kong was recognized for a contribution to the field of regenerative medicine and was awarded the Stem Cell Doctor of the Decade in 2021. That is such an impressive bio. I love it, and I'm so honored to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sarina. I'm so happy to be chatting with you.
I love it. And we're gonna dive in pretty quickly here. So I would love to know how you got here. I know you're interested in holistic medicine, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story and yeah, just tell our listeners kind of like how you got to this point and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my story is probably fairly unique. Partially because of my cultural heritage and the fact that I lived in China for my first 20 years. So it's, kind of unusual. I came to this country in 1992. I was 20 years old. I was already in university in China, but I basically had to make a quick decision whether or not I wanted to come to the US. I actually talked about this in my memoir, Tiger of Beijing. So it's a very interesting story. But that part is important because I did spend 20 years in the culture where Chinese medicine and Western medicine coexisted. And so I got this, kind of embracing of both systems. And that has stayed with me even after I came here, went to UCLA for medical school. But that's always part of me knew
Mhm.
that Chinese medicine works and Western medicine is fantastic. That's why I was in Western medical school because I loved science. But why did Chinese medicine work so well for a few thousand years?
Mhm.
What's going on there? The language was completely different, but there's uncovered mysteries of how the body heals because Chinese medicine was going after healing in a completely different angle. So, what do they know that we don't have the Western scientific language for? So, that was always part of who I am as a person or as a healer. Um, Western medicine is exciting. It's very direct in its approach of uncovering the causes of disease, and we think we can know answer from A to B. We know exactly what caused what, but that model has fallen short when it comes to chronic illnesses. When we have an acute disease, infection, or trauma, that works really well. But when it comes to chronic illnesses, a lot of times the causes are multifactorial, even for something like autism, right? I mean, it's a chronic illness, even though it started
Mhm.
very young. A lot of people's chronic illness started later on in life that had a lot to do with lifestyle
Mhm.
reasons. But even something like autism, what was going on? And we have spent in Western medicine billions of dollars trying to uncover the causes of all these chronic illnesses, such as Alzheimer's. And we're nowhere close to finding a cure this day compared to 20 years ago. So it hasn't been
Wow.
very successful at figuring out what's going on with these diseases. So, which means there's a whole lot of suffering. People
Mhm.
are sick and people are
Mhm.
not finding hope. They're stuck.
Mhm. Mhm.
So how can we move the needle and get these people to be unstuck? And the traditional route has not been very successful. So then
Mhm.
maybe you want to look at potential a more some kind of perspective that's a system approach that is looking at the multi factors instead
Mhm.
of just focusing on simple relationships. So that's where my journey as a Western medicine trained physician, seeing the limitations of Western medicine. And so I actually specialized in psychiatry, which in a sense is a
Mhm.
fairly integrative specialty because you have to understand not just the brain, you have to have some knowledge of the brain and neurotransmitters and know your brain
Yes.
functions. That's why, the board exam we had to go through, a third of the exam was neurologies, right? So you need to understand the brain. But the brain doesn't function just on its own. It's not like floating above your body, right?
Mhm.
The brain is connected to everything else that's going on in your
Mhm.
body. And that's where psychiatry was not doing the brain justice by focusing only on the brain.
Right.
Psychiatry, yes, we talk about psychology, how we adapt to stress and how childhood
Mhm.
trauma can have an effect. That's all great. But still, as a physical entity, your brain, it can get sick. And that's why
Mhm.
we start throwing medications at people, is because we believe there's a physical reason for why people are getting depressed, anxious, or psychotic. But if you were talking about physical basis for the disease, then you better look at everything physical. But if you're not looking at how your thyroid is affecting your body, how your male and female hormones are affecting the body, how all the nutrients and vitamins are minerals are affecting how your brain is functioning, whether or not toxic environment, toxicity in your body, whether or not it's mold or heavy metal, how that's affecting your brain, or you're not looking at your immune system, how the inflammation is affecting, but all these factors, if you're not looking at
Mhm.
them, then you're missing a big chunk of the puzzle. So I started to feel that it was not adequate. The
Mhm.
model I was taught in medical
Mhm.
school and residency was not solving the problem in a more effective way. And also, I'm interested in improving my own health, right? We all want to
Mhm.
be more
Absolutely.
vibrant, right? Better memory, better energy, better physical capabilities, and not get sick ever,
Yeah.
right? We're
Yeah.
all interested in that.
Right.
So, in my quest to do that for myself, and also seeking that for my
Mhm.
patients, that's when I had to learn on my own of things that were not taught in medical school. And that means I'm looking more into the natural
Mhm.
therapy, into understanding what does the cutting edge science say? What does new research show? There are a lot of things going on that's not practiced by medicine because
Right.
medicine is 20 years behind the cutting edge research. So do we want to wait to implement all the things we already know? But do we wait for 20 years for the whole juggernaut
Absolutely not.
of this huge machine of medicine to catch up, or do we implement right away? So if you go into specialties like holistic medicine, anti-aging medicine, functional medicine, or integrated medicine, these are all different
Mhm.
names for the same thing, which is to look at the body as a whole and looking at what the new science is saying and how can we implement that. So I got interested in holistic aspects of medicine, and that led me to the anti-aging medicine, which is a bit of a misnomer. When people think anti-aging, they think about beauty and how
Mhm.
looking better. No, 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 no. That's
Mhm.
not the basic a concept of anti-aging medicine. Anti-aging is to prevent decline.
Mhm.
Aging is like a train going forward, and this is a train that's aiming at decline and death, right? So,
Mhm.
um, and the aging is tightly connected with illness, diseases. But if you can slow down the aging process, you literally can change whether or not you get sick at all. Because
Mhm.
what we know is that if you can decrease the rate of aging by 7 years, you are cutting the rate of chronic illness by half in the world. This is how
Mm.
powerful aging is in producing diseases.
Wow.
So I got interested in this concept of slowing down the aging process. So that's I became board certified with the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And anti-aging medicine embraces all kinds of cutting edge therapies, including stem cell therapy. And the moment I heard and understood what stem cells could do for a patient, I was all in. It's like a light bulb.
Oh,
It's
I love it.
literally, I think that's what I'm put on this earth to do,
Yes. Yeah,
is to bring this
you are.
powerful therapy to people, right?
Hmm.
I can help transform the landscape of human health
I
because
love this.
that's what I think is going to happen. If you can do regular IV stem cell treatments,
Yeah.
using young, vibrant cells, you literally can slow down the aging process by 15 to 20 years. I don't think
Oh
that's far
my
at
gosh,
all.
that's a yeah,
I don't think that's difficult. From
right.
animal studies, we already know that consistently regular IV treatments for animals who only live, these rats and mice only live for about 20 months. So it's very easy to study their lifespan.
Mm.
You give them regular IV stem cells, whether or not they're still fairly middle-aged or they're elders, they're
Yeah.
senior animals, it extends. So if you start in middle age, extends their lifespan by about 30%. Not just lifespan, but health span. They look great, they move great, they think great. So everything was reverted to the younger state. So already had proof, not just looking at their physically how they're doing. When we
Mhm.
dissect their brain and their muscles, all the neurotransmitters, growth factors, senescent markers, toxic waste buildup that comes with age, everything was reverted to the younger state. So I really think it's not
Wow.
far-fetched for us to slow the aging process down by 15 to 20 years. If we can do that, I believe we can cut down the rate of chronic illness by 75%. I don't think that's far-fetched.
Yeah.
Imagine if everybody can live much longer and much
Yeah.
healthier.
Yeah,
What
as
the
long as
world,
as long as because people always imagine like living longer and they imagine somebody being really frail, But
yeah,
it's
no,
like living longer, but
absolutely that's
also
not.
with vitality, right? But
Yeah,
that's like the mindset is, oh, I don't want to live that long, People
yeah.
say that all the time.
No, that's
And
what
it's
they showed in
yeah,
animal studies because
yeah.
when they gave these rats uh, IV stem cells when they are at the human equivalent age of 75. So they started them late, right? Not the
Oh
middle-aged
my
rat, but
gosh.
old rat.
Yeah.
And the time that these rats have left was, compared to rats that did not receive the stem cells, their lives, the amount of time remaining on Earth was 3 times as long. Not only living longer, but they look great. They
Mm,
have better, locomotion and they have better mental capabilities. So yeah, so we can really improve the quality of life for everybody. So I think that's transformative, and that
mm,
can not only relieve suffering in the
mm-hmm,
human existence, but also bring about more happiness and more
mm-hmm,
wisdom. I always tell
mm-hmm,
people, think about an old doctor. We all know like a beloved, like a community
mm-hmm.
doctor, right? 80 years old, moving around in the clinic and everybody loves the man. And he has all this wisdom, all this experience, and you just trust his judgment. But then conventionally, we know it won't last very long, right? He's 80 years
Mm-hmm.
old. So that's probably going to be over within a few years. He probably won't be able to work anymore. But if you start getting stem cells, guess what? If a doctor has started in middle age, the doctor may be able to live for another 20 years. So imagine all that wisdom and love and compassion is going to continue to be on earth for 20 more years to be shared with all the patients, with
Yeah.
all the family members. What a wonderful thing for the world, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
where we're at. We have the
Okay.
opportunity to do that.
I love it. I love it. It's that's such a beautiful journey. I mean, you just walked us through every part of it. And it's funny, I have been through chronic illness myself for about a decade. So I have a very long story through chronic illness, and I had to go through the natural modalities and like functional medicine and do all of that to get to where I have to be. But it took me 10 years, and this was about 5 years ago. So it took me a very long time to get to this point. And I'm still continuously looking for like better ways and, to teach people and to really spread the word because I don't think we just don't know enough about this. And I'm really happy that we're talking to you today because I want to digest a little bit more on the stem cell part. And if you could explain, and I mean, I don't know a ton about this. I know a little bit, but could you do like a 2-minute 101 on stem cells and how this works?
Yeah. So everybody started out in life as a single stem cell. So just go back all the way to when you were first conceived. And whatever that's in that one single cell had the capability of making you happen, right?
Mhm.
That's incredible. How did it know? How did it know to go from one cell to this complex organism? And that
Mhm.
is the intelligence that's embedded in the DNA. That's the blueprint for life. So whatever that's happening within that cell, it has the basic knowledge and an intelligence. And as the cells start to divide and forming a new human, they start to gain more function. But every time when you gain more function, that means you're expressing different proteins and capabilities. You're activating certain genetic, portions of the
Mhm.
DNA. And when you do that, you also lose potentials. So it's not, you can't have the best of all worlds. If you start to gain function, then you lose potential. So the cells go from being able to become anything. Gradually, it will become more and more specialized. But each
Mhm.
way along this path, they're all stem cells, but they just are different. So they're almost like thousand shades of gray. So they
Right.
all start go down all the way to a fully functional end stage organ specific cell. But before it becomes organ specific cell, like a heart muscle cell or a liver cell, then there's a tissue specific stem cell. So that stem
Mhm.
cell is the last bit, last a bit of potential. And
Mhm.
that potential is only to become the tissue specific cell.
Mhm.
So the tissue cell is no longer a stem cell, but this one step before that, that's a stem cell. So you
Mhm.
from the fertilized egg all the way to the tissue specific stem cell, everywhere along that line are stem cells. So that's why when we talk about stem cells, it's
Mhm.
unfair to generalize it. What
Mhm.
kind of stem cell? What are we talking about? But
Mhm.
but that's the type of potential that we can tap into. And now we are able to utilize various parts of along this whole journey. We can get a tissue specific stem cell. That's one way to do it. That's a little harder to do, and that requires a lot of times manipulation. Um, and that, with the FDA, the journey for approval, and that
Mhm.
becomes a little harder. Or you can do a shortcut. You can get something like mesenchymal stem cell, which
Mhm.
is very popular these days. These are powerful, kind of generalized stem cells that's all over your body. Anywhere
Mhm.
you have blood vessels, you will have these stem cells because that's where they live. They live right outside of your blood vessels. They are holding on to the blood vessel. They're sensing what's going through the blood. And they're also sensing what's going on in the neighborhood right there. And they also talk to the local stem cells. So these cells have the ability to signal local stem cells, right? The last
Mhm.
stage stem cell, telling them to differentiate and regenerate. But they can also talk to your entire body, including your immune system, to come on board and start the repair process. So they give out these complex signals to tell the body to become more regenerative. Because a
Mhm.
lot of us, including people with chronic illness, are stuck in inflammation. The
Mhm.
inflammation are these, some initially it's important to have inflammation to promote healing, but if you
Correct.
get stuck there, then the healing
Mhm.
can never really happen. So a lot of people are stuck in this modern age.
Mhm.
So these stem cells can help unstuck you
Mhm.
by sending out information to calm the inflammation, by shifting your immune system to be less inflammatory, and
Mhm.
to tell all the regenerative process to start happening by bringing in immune cells, by telling the local cells to start either bad cells to die away and be
Mhm.
removed by the immune system, or by telling the local stem cells to start multiplying and replenish the tissue. All of a sudden, now you've got fresh new tissue. Now your body can function. So that's kind of the quick overview of stem
I
cells.
love
I mean,
it.
they're everywhere along the way. You can tap into it, right? There's embryonic
Right.
stem cells from the early embryo, and that's a whole other, bag, and that has its own, issues. It's not really legal in the US
Mhm.
to use that unless you have FDA approval, and no one has that approval.
Okay. Okay. So an average person, let's say like me, will come to your clinic and then will you be using the mesenchymal cells in
Yes.
that
Yeah,
case? Yes.
that will be a major portion of what I provide. But what I'm doing that's a little different from everybody else
Hmm.
um, is that I'm using a combination of cells
Okay.
because people either are using, so there are three major camps of stem cell therapy. If you just go to any doctor, I do stem cell therapy. Okay, what kind? They may get cells from your bone marrow. They
Mm.
may get cells from your own fat, or
Hmm.
they may use something that's very young from the umbilical cord. These are the three major camps.
Hmm.
Um, so each camp is very different. I when I first got into the field, my first task is to find out what camp am I going to join.
Right.
I need
Right.
to join the camp that gives people the best chance of
Hmm.
improvement. So that's where I started to just read tons and tons of research and then put together this, ended up becoming a lecture. It's called ROMSC's Created Equal. So that one is
Mm.
on YouTube. I
Oh,
actually
amazing.
compared the cells from the umbilical cord to the cells of the bone marrow and the fat, looking
Hmm.
at all aspects, how anti-inflammatory they are, how metabolically active, how many generations they have left, how long their telomeres are, how much toxic, how senescent they are, and how neuroprotective, and all these different aspects of how the cells are producing its effect in the body. I was comparing these three categories and also how safe they are as far as being able to fight off cancer. So in every category, the
Mm.
winner is umbilical cord stem cells.
Mm.
So, I mean, this is not my opinion. This is based on research people have done from all around the world. So that's the source I use, the younger source. But even within the first the younger source, right, the umbilical cord, there are different camps too. There are people who are using umbilical cord blood cells, or
Hmm.
people who are using the cord tissue cells. There are also a small fraction that use cells from the amniotic membrane. So the cord tissue and amniotic membrane cells are rich in mesenchymal stem cells, the MSCs I was talking about.
Hmm. Hmm.
The cord blood is rich in hematopoietic stem cells.
Mm.
Those are capable of generating the entire bloodline. So
Mm.
your red blood cells, white blood cells. And the cord blood also has a lot of primitive immune cells. So those are also stem cells, but those are all in the line of immune system. So what I did was to bring all three portions together because I have had success using all three types, but just from looking at research, they all have different properties and they all, and because from these different compartments, even if you're looking at MSCs, mesenchymal stem
Mm.
cells, each compartment has mesenchymal stem cells. The cord blood has very little, but still has some. But when the MSCs are from these different compartments, they all have different surface markers, they have different differentiation pathways and different tendencies to express themselves. So they're good at promoting regeneration of different organ systems. So, they're not all the same, but if I can bring them all together, then I'm harnessing the capabilities of all these compartments. And one of the favorite things I like to say is God created everything for a reason, right?
Hmm.
There's a reason for it.
Hmm.
There's a reason. So who am I to play God saying, well, the umbilical cord tissue has all these MSCs. So MSCs there is, that is, and that's the, I would just give you cells from the cord tissue. But what about all those potentials from the other two compartments? Why am I not harnessing those? So I'm bringing everything together. So one reason is that from research, it's also shown that cord blood cells are very helpful. But when you use MSCs, in addition, it actually amplifies the result. So the
Mm.
two are working together and hand in hand. So you're amplifying, you're maximizing the benefits. So, when you ask, what kind of cells do I use? So I'm giving you a long answer because
Right.
it's a complicated landscape because there's so many possibilities. And
Right.
what does the doctor choose? I always say that there are two most important things in stem cell therapy. Really, there are only two things that matter. One is the source of the cells. You better get the
Hmm.
best cells. the most vibrant, the most capable, and also the safest. And the second part is the art of where to put it. And
Mm.
that's this
Yeah,
is where medicine come from, right? Okay,
right,
so you got cells. What are you going to do with it, right?
right,
So I can put it in the vein, or I can put in your joint. I can inject
right.
into soft tissue, or I can inject into different organs, which I don't do, and I don't think we need to at this point because I
Mm.
can direct the cells to go to certain locations using light, using laser light. You can use other things too. I
Wow.
also use ultrasound. So there are different things, or shockwave, sound therapy. There are different things
Mm.
that you can do to attract the cells to certain areas. But how do you apply it? What's the best way? Is IVs the route
Mm-hmm.
superior in some cases? Yes. And
Mm.
superior in a lot of cases. So why? So that's the art
Mm-hmm.
part of medicine. Yeah.
Wow, that is so impressive and so cool. I don't know. I've studied science myself, so I kind of relate to all this and I love just the explanation. So okay, so let's just say someone like me. A lot of my clients look and are like me and they just want to better their lives. So if I were to walk into your clinic, how would that go? Would I mean, how are you able to get those different types of cells from me? Because I know you mentioned like umbilical
Yeah, well,
cord
we
and all.
get it from the umbilical cord, right? So,
Yeah.
so these are cells that are made in tissue banks. So these are FDA registered and inspected tissue banks. So
Okay.
what they do is obtain tissue. So people need to
Okay.
realize, and there's still this misconception that stem cells therapy is illegal. I mean, that's just really silly.
Hmm.
So people don't know the law, don't know,
Hmm.
really what's going on in this field. Stem cell therapy, if you start to manipulate the cells and then you don't go through clinical study and you just start giving it to people, that is illegal. You can't
Mm.
just do that because the FDA says, okay, if you start to manipulate the cells, which include growing the cells into huge numbers in culture, it includes adding different chemicals or enzymes to potentially change the cells, then the FDA says you're creating a drug. And then you better get approval for drug study. And if that shows benefit and shows it's safe, then you can give it to people. However, what we're doing is tissue transplantation. We're not giving drugs. And how can we do that? FDA says in their guideline 2017, they said, well, you can give stem cells um, as a tissue transplantation if you do not manipulate the cells. And then you're putting the cells in the body the way they were intended to.
Mm.
Now, how they were working in the body before is how it's working in the body now. Then is a tissue transplant is in the same category as an organ transplantation, blood transfusion, right? All these are transplants. So a liver doctor a surgeon that transplant a liver does not go through FDA approval to allow liver transplant. This is called the practice of medicine. That is monitored by medical boards, right? That's part of the medicine. This is not a drug. This is how we practice medicine, how we heal people. And we're not using the drug process. It's the same thing when we give stem cells from one person to another. If we don't change the cells and we're giving the cells the way how they were function, then the FDA says, okay, fine, you don't have to go through the drug study. Then you're doing a tissue transplant. So this is in the realm of a
Mm.
medical practice. That's what we're doing.
Mm.
Of course, the important thing, from the FDA perspective is traceability. We need to understand, that's what we want people to do. If you have stem cells, we need to be able to trace,
Mhm.
who it came from. So if one day something happens, we need to be able to figure out, who was a donor, what's the
Mm.
process of obtaining the tissue? Did anything go wrong in the process? So that's the part that FDA does have a hand in, which is traceability.
Mm.
But you don't need an FDA approval for the therapy. So
Mhm.
that's how we are able to get the cells from a tissue bank and
Mm.
laboratory that process the tissue. So they can
Mm.
extract the cells without using chemicals and they don't go put them in the incubator to expand them. So they don't change them. They just carefully mechanically separate
Mm.
out the cells. And these cells are usually cryopreserved. So
Mm.
they're carefully lowered in temperature
Mhm. Wow.
and eventually to the point where the cells are slowing down their metabolic activity so much that they're literally frozen in animation. So they just stopped
Wow.
moving. And that's when you can put them in liquid nitrogen or ultra low freezer. And they just stay that way, kind of frozen for as
Hmm.
long as you need generally, until you're ready to warm them up and thaw them out, and all of a sudden everything start working again. So that's kind of how it's done. So we don't do that in the clinic. Although
Hmm.
if you're trying to get cells from your own body, like your fat or your bone marrow,
Right.
that is processed in the doctor's facility. And that's of course less certain as far as what criteria, what standards of sterilization and processing, and that depends on what each doctor's doing. But if you're getting
Hmm.
it from a tissue bank, that's actually a lot more regulated
Hmm.
than a
Hmm.
doctor's office, right? As
Yeah.
a facility that's producing these cells. So in the tissue banks, they have certain clean room standards and,
Right.
all these CGMP standards. So that's where the cells are produced and they are sent to doctors. And doctors only thaw them out upon time of use, and that's what we do
Okay.
in the clinic. So we get everything prepped. Only when we're ready to inject, that's when
Hmm.
we thaw the cells out and give it to people.
Amazing. And what does this process look like? Are you coming in like once a week? How long is it? I know
Oh
it's probably
no.
different for every person.
Yeah, so stem cell therapy, when we talk about how often, it really depends on what do we know? How do the cells work?
Mhm.
What kind of effects are we producing? So the stem cells have the ability, then we really have to talk about how the cells work, right?
Mm.
So stem cells, with all its intelligence, one thing, if we're just focusing on mesenchymal stem cells, which is a majority of what's going on in the US, a little bit of hematopoietic stem cells. So together, they're anti-inflammatory. They can shift your immune system to a more balanced state. If your immune system
Mm.
is weak, it can help it to
Mhm.
be stronger. If your immune system is overactive, like in most of the chronic illnesses and autoimmune
Mhm.
diseases, then
Mhm.
it can calm this immune overreaction. And
Wow.
it has the ability to um, protect damaged tissue to help it to repair, and to prevent it to die. Sometimes when tissue are damaged, neighboring cells may end up dying, etc. It has a protective effect and also has anti-cancer properties, so it can help kill off, basic pathological cells. It has ability to um, uh, fight microbes for you because it can actually secrete direct antimicrobial peptides. We're talking about mesenchymal stem cells now. And
Mhm.
it can transfer fresh new mitochondria if you're
Mhm.
using a cell source that's younger, right, with new
Mhm.
mitochondria. If you're using
Right.
your own, that's your own mitochondria. I'm sorry,
Mm.
we're not revamping your mitochondria, in that sense. And So the cells also have the ability to tell your local stem cells to replicate and
Mm.
replenish the local tissue. So all these are the mechanisms. And there's another mechanism that can cause long-term benefit, which is the part of gene modification. And that
Mhm.
comes from the microRNA that's in the exosomes secreted by the cells. Exosomes are just little packets of information the cells butt off from its
Uh-huh.
membrane. So these exosomes contain microRNA that they're so small, they go across the cell nucleus, right? Get to the core of the
Mm.
cells and
Mhm.
actually work on the DNA. And they
Mm.
can repair the DNA and cause
Wow.
long-term change in the gene expression, because a lot of modern chronic diseases
Mhm.
have epigenetic component, right? It's not
Mhm.
the gene
Mhm.
itself, it's what's happening to the gene. So it
Correct.
can help make epigenetic changes, thus
Wow.
reversing a lot of the chronic issues. And that benefit can be long lasting. It could be your whole life. So there are different stages of repair. The anti-inflammatory stage is very quick. It can happen within, I see that in my clinic within 30
Yeah.
minutes. People can
Oh
have
my
decreased
God.
pain, decreased swelling. It can happen very
Mhm.
fast. or in the brain, people who have mental and
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's condition
Mm-hmm.
have shifts in their abilities to respond to environment, to communicate within a day. So it can happen very fast. But that's
Wow.
the anti-inflammatory stage. That's the
Yes.
cell to cell signaling, a lot of the signaling pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second stage is the tissue rebuilding.
Mm.
So you are actually making new, fresh, healthy tissue. And Rome is not built in a day. It's going to take time to make new things, right? You need the protein, you need the nutrition. That's why we add the amino acids in our
Mm-hmm.
regimen. People need to take the amino acids to make new tissue. And then, and then you have to allow the tissue to build layer by layer, right? That's going to take from weeks to months time to be fully uh,
Is that related to the peptide therapy? The amino
Peptide
acids?
can
Yeah.
accelerate tissue
Okay.
repair. Yeah,
Okay.
can
Okay.
definitely optimize it. And then the last stage will that the longer lasting will be the
Mm-hmm.
genetic modification. So depending on the different stages, right? If you have a acute injury, it's possible I give you one treatment, you're done. We help you repair, regenerate, and then you're good. Or if you were about to do surgery and we give you one treatment and you're healing 2 to 3 times as fast and you're healing better, and you're done. But if you have a
Mm-hmm.
chronic condition,
Mm-hmm.
then there is a long-term process and it's much more complex. So the underlying causes may be in place and you can do a lot of things to remove that. I think that's where your expertise is at, helping people
Right.
remove a lot of causes and looking at health in
Yes.
a very, very multifactorial and complex manner. And so you have to do that if you want long-term benefit. But in the short term, can stem cells get you back to a much healthier state? Yes. But
Mm-hmm.
but all the other factors, it's like all
Mm-hmm.
the other forces are still at play if you don't address them. Um, so a long-term condition usually takes a longer time to repair and you want waves of repair because just like medications, right? When you are,
Yeah.
let's say you got sick from some kind of infection, the doctor gave you a bottle of antibiotics. You don't
Mm-hmm.
just down the whole bottle and say, I'm done, right? You
True.
have to respect there's a natural rhythm, of these critters. You've got to hit them at different time span, and you need to keep going after it because that's the way biological system works. And same thing with
Right.
stem cell therapy. You don't just do a whole huge batch of stem cells saying, oh, this is it, we're done. Actually,
Nope.
when you give a lot, sometimes you get less results. There's a dose response.
Mm.
Just because you give more doesn't mean it's better. So what's
Mm-hmm.
better is to give appropriate amount
Mm-hmm.
at the Goldilocks zone, and then you give it multiple times. So
Mm-hmm.
you keep pushing this regeneration because every time I give you some stem cells, those stem cells will go to battle for you
Right.
and they will fight it and they will promote repair. But in that process, they can also uh, diminish in numbers because they're going to die because it's fighting a toxic environment for you a lot of
Yes.
times. So in that process, and even if it's not that toxic, everything has a lifespan. Once you wake those cells up, then there's an amount of time that they can be alive there for you. In general, when I put stem cells into somebody's body, the cells live for about 1 to 3 months. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
live forever. But during that process, they can produce a lot of benefit. They can be attracted to the areas where they're needed. And but uh, they will go away within 1 to 3 months. However, they do produce all these signals, including the exosomes. So these signals will keep generating the benefit for another about 1 to 3 months. So, let's say and the maximally we can have the effect for about 6 months. Not
Mm.
that the longer lasting results are not going to be there, but the bulk of this action, this repair, probably is going to be pretty much not in your body after 6 months, really within three to
Wow.
six months. So this is why the protocol and also from clinical experience, right? That's how the protocol comes about from the knowledge from the science and the experience from the clinical application. So the protocol is that for chronic condition, we want to hit the body multiple times. In my clinic, we say at least 3 times. We want to give the body a chance to finish these 3 sessions. So each session to the next is about 1 to 2 months apart.
Hmm.
So we always making sure there's some cells working and there's some
Hmm.
signals in the body, but just when it's waning, that's when we
Hmm.
hit it again. So
Hmm.
in general, 3 times. And then you may get to a really good place, and then it's a matter of maintenance, right? Life
Hmm.
is a downhill train that keeps
Hmm.
going and going and going faster and faster. So you need to kind of hold back the speed of that decline. And that's where stem cells can come in again to reduce the decline. So,
Wow.
so the question, the answer
Yeah.
is there's an initial acute stage to
Hmm.
address the illness, and then there's a long-term the
Hmm.
stage to prevent the decline.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you for being so thorough. I know it's such a complicated thing to answer because you're talking to like the general person and it's just very multifaceted and layered. I was just thinking, so let's say you do the therapy once and then do you do testing just to make sure like or how do you what's the process for like post injection?
Yeah, so you asked the process. So we start with a comprehensive evaluation. So we do a thorough, usually virtual meeting with the patient and really understand what the patient needs. So we can design a very tailored program to help that particular patient. Um, but the process is really coming in for only we may do some preliminary laboratory tests to look at a lot of different factors, their metabolic, especially sugar metabolism, their lipid levels, of course, a few inflammation markers, and their vitamin D level, their hormone levels, and how their thyroid is. Some of the major factors that, instead of getting carried away and ordering 100 different tests, we can just narrow it down to limited number, but that will give us a lot of clue on where things need to be optimized, and we can follow those markers as time goes on. So yes, so we recommend people do a whole set of comprehensive labs, and then we'll review those labs with patients and we'll follow them over time. And then when they come in for treatment, it's a very comprehensive program that I'm very proud of, because that's kind of my quest to optimize health. Everything I'm recommending patients do, I do it. I do them every day. And that includes
Mm-hmm.
different nutritional therapies, not overwhelming amount. I believe in foundational nutrition. I
Hmm.
don't believe in bombarding the body with one
Yeah.
substance, especially for long term. So foundational, nitric oxide, it's important. All the amino acids you want to have, the fulvic acid, which I think is
Hmm.
phenomenal because it gives you all the essential trace minerals and, some of the antioxidants and help your body detoxify. And then there's uh, also a supplement that can help mobilize stem cells and help the stem cells to be just more prevalent in the body. So even
Hmm.
after I give people the stem cells, I want the stem cells to keep circulating
Right.
and instead of going back to the bone marrow. So this particular supplement, is called Stem Regen, can help with that. So there are just a few foundational supplements
Oh my gosh, I
for
have
people
so
to
many
take.
questions for you. You have no idea. I feel like this could go on and on.
Yeah,
But
so
unfortunately, yeah, we're at the end
mhm.
of the hour, but I'll let you close and then we'll
Oh, it goes
say
so
how people
fast.
can find
Yes.
you. I know.
Yeah. So then when they come in for the treatment, we also use laser light to direct the
Hmm.
cells and to make the cells more active, more mobile. And so that's kind of a comprehensive packet. And then, we use peptides as well, depending on
Hmm.
what each person's needs are, because peptides, that's the beauty of peptides, that we can target to different organ systems and different issues. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's the general approach.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Why don't you tell everyone how people can find you, your Instagram handle, your website, and anything
Yeah.
else?
So I think if people want to understand stem cell therapy, one of the best resources would be my YouTube channel. It's it's Joy Kong MD. So that's
Mhm.
my YouTube channel. I have so many videos on different aspects of stem cell therapy. I think people can really, binge and really get a good picture of it. And then my website joykongmd.com has all these aspects of what I'm doing. So including my clinic in Los Angeles, including the stem cell therapy, the stem cell uh, company that I started where we provide the very comprehensive stem cell product to actually doctors all around the country. And also the academy I founded where doctors can receive training. And then the skin cream that I developed
Mhm.
called Chara Omni, which is 100% natural with stem cells and peptides. And it's the only thing I'm willing to put on
I'm
my
gonna buy that. No, I'm
for
not
the
joking.
last 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal cream. And then also, I have a memoir called Tiger of Beijing that detailed how I actually got to
Oh,
this country. That wasn't easy because my first visa attempt was rejected. So that's when I was 20 years old, facing my first major obstacle in life. So, yeah, people can find everything there. And my Instagram is Dr. underscore Joy underscore Kong. That has certain clips of my education, but also some personal stuff too, like my travels, and it would be fun for people
I love
to
it.
look at.
It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on the Revitalized Life podcast. Thank you so much, and I'll have all the links on the podcast. Thank you.
Wonderful.